Okay, folks, so let's go ahead and let's take a look at the next thing that I want to point out to you, which sometimes is just a pitfall by many students. And that is the concept of stroke. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's just create some letter forms that have stroke on it. So I'm going to go ahead and start out with a Helvetica bold. That's got a 100-point stroke, or excuse me, 100-point font. And then I'm also going to go ahead and utilize something like a Times New Roman, okay, 100-point font. Now, both of these things, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to stroke the wrong way. I'm going to start out with that, and then I'm going to show you the right way to do it. So, here we go. First things first, we have, let's talk about like what stroke is. So to do that, I'm going to use a shape first, right? So here we have a box, right? This black box. I don't like black, so let's make it a red box, right? So this red box is filled with the color red, this box right here. So in Illustrator, on our tool palette, we have a fill, and we have what we call a stroke. So if I click on stroke, what we're talking about is the outline. So if I go ahead and I click on that, and I make it black, and I click off of here, now you can see that is a red box with a black stroke or black outline. So, and then I can go ahead and I can utilize what we call our stroke palette. I'm going to get rid of some of this other stuff that we don't need. And I can increase my stroke. And I can round my stroke in my corners. I can even go ahead and I can say, by default, stroke goes to the center, which means that it falls a little bit on the inside of the object and a little bit on the outside. I can say I want it to all fall on the inside, so the object does not get any bigger, or I can say I want it to all fall on the outside, so the object doesn't get any smaller, right? So that's what stroke is. Letter forms are objects too, right? So they can have stroke. So I can color them and I can give them outlines. I can do both. So let's color them first. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to click on this. The color really wants to be used, so I'll let that come out. But I'm going to just come and I'm going to make this a red stroke, and I'm going to make this a red stroke, just like that. And then I'm going to select the both of these things, and I'm going to click on my stroke. I called that a red stroke before. That's a fill. I'm sorry. So anyway, I'll click on my stroke. I'll go to my swatches, and I'll make it a black stroke. Now, what ends up happening is that by default, what we end up doing here with letter forms is we have that thing where the stroke goes a little on the outside and a little on the inside. And I'm zoomed in here to this one, and I'm going to go ahead and increase my stroke weight. So as you can see, thicker on the outside, thicker on the inside. And this is a common pitfall by people, because for one reason or another, if we want something to stand out, we should put an outline on it. That's what people seem to think. So if I go ahead and I try to do that same concept over here, watch what happens. There is a huge difference between sans serif and serif fonts. So if I go ahead and I put the same stroke weight on, which is 4, big problems. Look at the letter R. Do you see that you don't even see red in here anymore, or in here? Or the letter T, or the letter S. Look at all of these things. We're all running into issues. So if I go ahead and I bring this down to 3, okay, I get a little bit more here. R is still problematic there. If I bring it down to 2, that's still a problem. It's better, but take a look at K. All right, we've lost that. Bring it down to 1. Still a problem with K. All right, bring it down to nothing. And you can see that since it's a serif font and there's thin parts and thick parts to it, that this does not work. So I will tell you that personally, for me, it's a pet peeve when I see it in action like this, and students do it a lot. And again, why do they do it? Because if I want something to stand out, I should put an outline on it, right? Sometimes, yeah, you totally should, but other times you shouldn't. So I'm going to show you the correct way in which we can do this. So first, let's go ahead Let's make this the incorrect way again. Boom, 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 boom. 4-point stroke, 4-point stroke, right? Yep. Okay. So let's just go ahead and take those, and I'll move them out of the way. And I'm going to copy them back down here, and I'm going to take my stroke directly off of them, okay? So what I want to do is this. I want to use a special palette in Illustrator called the Appearance palette. So I'm going to go to Window and Appearance, and here we are. And all that other stuff keeps popping up because it's all connected to Adobe's dock, by the way. So I'm going to go ahead and paragraph and character, I can go ahead and just move over here. I'll put my appearance palette up here. So I'm going to select my object here, right? And the appearance palette reads it, and it recognizes that it's type and that there are characters there. So since it's type, it doesn't show me any kind of colors at the moment. So I have to go ahead and click on something like a fill. So when I click add a new fill, even though it was filled with red before, it will go ahead and give me a fill of black. This is something I have to do. I have to apply a fill to it. So I can apply the red fill just again like the other one. Now, stroke. Let's go ahead and first let's pick a color of black. How about that? And now let's make it 4 points, just like before. Now, you might say this looks exactly like what I had before, and you would not be lying. It 100% is. But what I can do in the appearance palette that I can't do with just normal stroking is this. I can go ahead and I can take my stroke and I can click on it and I can drag it below my fill. So you see how it becomes like a little hand? Just click and drag below fill. And now the stroke is on the outside or underneath it. So fill sits on top at all times. So now I can increase this and I can, have a thicker stroke. And it works out pretty well. And here's the best part too. Sometimes you want to double stroke a letter. So I'll go ahead and I'll add another stroke. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make my other stroke white. And since the white stroke and the black stroke are both 7 points, you can't see any difference. But if I go ahead and I make my white stroke less than 7 points, check that out. So now you have a red fill, then you have a white stroke, and then you have a black double stroke, which is pretty cool. If I go ahead and I click in here and I mess around with things like, I don't know, my kerning, I can make something that probably looks kind of okay. There we are. And here's the best part. After I make this, let's say I don't want it to be called stroke anymore, and let's say I just want it to be called my name. There. It's 100% editable, which means we can change it, not eat it. That's edible. So anyway, we have that ability to us. Can I take this and can I just apply the same thing? Well, yes and no. If I take this and I can use the eyedropper tool, it will apply the same font and the same color. But this whole concept of appearance is essentially a filter. So I can't just copy it from one to another. I have to actually go ahead and build it a second time. But it's not hard to build. So again, select my stroke word here on my serif Times New Roman text. I'll click on my fill. It'll automatically default to black. Pick whatever color I want. It doesn't matter. Then I'll go ahead and I'll pick my stroke. I'll make that black. I'll make a really big fat stroke, right? So it looks really, really bad, right? That looks awful. Awful and a half. That's how bad it is. So now I'm going to take my stroke and I'm going to just drag it below my fill. But I have to have it selected first. Okay, I unselected it so it didn't work. So select it first and drag it underneath my fill, and voila, there we go. And I can play around too with the concept of maybe making these things pretty much touch one another. Maybe that's what I'm looking for. Or maybe I do want a little bit of space. I don't know. I gotta experiment. I gotta see what I'm doing here, and I gotta see the best way to do it. Just like that, right? Cool. And again, if I want to do another stroke, I'll just go ahead and say add a new stroke. it'll put this in here. I'm going to make my stroke a different color, like white or something like that. And I'll make it a little smaller. And I should also put it behind my fill, but probably in front of the other stroke. And I'll tell you what, there is a time in the year when we see this, and we see it a lot. But we don't see it with, we see it with red, and white's part of it, but we don't see it with black. Not black. We see it with a dark green, right? And the font tends to be this font here called Impact. And it doesn't say editable, right? What it says is something else. And generally speaking, that double stroke's a little bit bigger, like that. And it says things like sale. And what are we selling? Oh, I don't know. Anything around the holiday season. That's what we're selling. Now, whoa, what's up with that? See this? What is that? Well, guys, what that is, I'm going to turn my eyeballs off of my fill and everything. But what that is, right, is that is this part of the letter form, see this triangle? That's it building a stroke. That happens in some letter forms, but not all, okay? So it's not like an all or nothing and like you're stuck with that. And like my sale has an alfalfa like hairdo on top. That's just not always going to be there. Sometimes you'll see it, sometimes you won't. Like when I go ahead and I change this to Helvetica, for example, it's not even there, right? So some fonts have things like that happen to them. Other fonts do not. The only way that you can go ahead and figure out whether it's going to do it or not is simply to experiment with them, and then you'll find what works and what doesn't work for you, and whether you want to go ahead and increase your strokes or decrease your strokes or anything like that. But end of the day, the only way to apply strokes and be successful not only in this class but in graphic design in general is to utilize the appearance palette. Other than that, you should not be applying strokes to fonts. Okay? So I'm throwing that out there again. The only way to be successful in this class and in graphic design in general when applying strokes to fonts is to use the appearance palette. So come back, watch this video, watch it 10 times if you have to. Burn that into memory. You need to utilize that. And ultimately, trust me on this one, it will make life easier. Okay? So you'll have that ability. In fact, hell, you can make the stuff once, copy it, throw it into a new document, paste it right in there, and like I said, change it because it's editable. And if you don't like that font, okay, how about we do that phosphate inline? That looks kind of weird like that because it's got an inline font. What if it's not inline though? What if it's solid? Or what if we do Palatino or Optima or Sathu or Monaco? We can pick all sorts of different fonts and this can still work. Okay? Some obviously better, like the Snell Roundhead, not so good with this, but we can do all sorts of different things and make this still an extremely readable and easy thing because again, it's editable, which makes our lives just super, super, super easy in this kind of regard. So you really only need to get it right once or twice, and then you can just copy and paste after that, and then you can just come in here and change colors and modify things. What if you want to change a color but it is not in your swatches, right? Because these are pretty limited swatches. Well, let's say you have a custom color. Something like, I don't know. How about something like this? Just like kind of almost like burnt kind of custom plum. Okay, so make the color first, drag it into your swatch palette, and then select this, and there it will be in your swatch palette. So you can go ahead and access that, and you'll be able to use that. Okay, so that gives you an option there in case you need to look for specific colors when you're adding fills and or strokes to type. So go ahead, experiment, play around with this stuff. That's the only way you're going to get good at it. Assignments will totally help you out, but really you got to play. Okay, experiment, 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 and enjoy. Thank you.